In today's video, we're going to go over the last two types of corrective waves, which are flats and triangles. I'll tell you all about the rules and guidelines you must follow when drawing them, as well as the different variation types of each. Before we get started, just a quick reminder that this is a tutorial series and is part 5. If you haven't already watched the first 4 parts, I'd highly recommend you do so before watching this one. Concepts from previous videos will be applied here as well. In part 4 of this series, I started to give you an intro into flats, but just to jog your memory a bit, I basically told you that all flats are drawn as 3-3-5 structures, and that the A and B waves are made up of 3-wave ABCs themselves, and the C wave is made up of a 5-wave impulse. I also told you that there's 3 different types of flats: regular, expanded, and running. Before we dive into those different variations, I'll give you some rules and guidelines that apply to all the different types of flats. The first rule of a flat is that the B wave needs to terminate near the start of the A wave. So our A wave starts up here, and our B wave ends all the way up here as well. These 2 points are very close to each other. The reasoning behind this is because our A wave is a 3-wave structure. So if we have 2 3-wave structures back to back, it only makes sense that the second one would retrace almost the full distance of the first one. The next rule of flats is that the C wave terminates just slightly beyond the end of the A wave. This is basically a direct result of the B wave retracing almost the full amount of the A wave. We essentially only have one wave making a net retracement, which is our 5-wave C wave. And if you remember back to part 4, this is significantly different than zigzags, where the C wave is significantly below the end of the A wave. And for one more comparison to zigzags, flats in general retrace much less than zigzags. Now, that shouldn't really be too surprising just by looking at the general structure. Zigzags have 2 motive waves propelling them downwards, whereas a flat only has 1. This next guideline I want to tell you about, I've drawn very out of scale here, but I just want to drive the point across. So ignore the fact that the 1 and 5 are nowhere near in length, the timing of all the waves are off, etc. The point I really want to drive across with this image is that flats virtually always precede or follow an extension. So here I have 3 waves upwards, where the 3rd wave is clearly very extended. It's probably more than you'd ever see, but again, this is just to drive the point across. Right after this major extension, we have a flat as our entire 4th wave. And you might remember that in 5-wave structures, 2 waves are often zigzags. On a similar note, 4 waves of impulsive moves are often flats, and 2 waves are rarely flats. Let's dive into the different variations of flats. The one I've been showing you all these examples with is just a regular flat. And as I've been telling you, in a regular flat, the B wave terminates near the beginning of the A wave, and the C wave just past the end of the A wave. There's actually a far more common variation of flats, and it's called an expanded flat. In an expanded flat, the B wave terminates beyond the starting level of the A wave. So our A starts up here, and our B goes above that, all the way up to here. And furthermore, our C wave actually ends substantially further beyond the end of the A wave than a regular flat does. And finally, the least common type of flat is known as a running flat. These are rare and almost never happen. A running flat takes the shape of an expanded flat for its first 2 waves, in that it's a 3-wave A wave, followed by a B wave that retraces fully past the start of the A. However, the C wave fails to travel the full distance, falling short of the end of the A wave. So the C wave ends here, whereas the A wave ends down here. This is where we differ from an expanding flat, where the C wave is significantly below the end of the A wave. In part 4, I also started to show you that with zigzags, you can combine them together into double and triple zigzags. You can actually do the same thing with flats, and we call these combinations. Now, combinations get pretty complex, so we'll get to them in a later video. So now, let's get into triangles. In part 4 of this series, I told you that triangles are 5 waves. They're made up of an A, B, C, D, E structure, where each wave is a 3-wave ABC themselves. Just to give you an overview of triangles, they basically represent a balance of forces. Bulls are trying to push the market upwards, and bears are trying to push it downwards, both with equal pressure. As a result, the market just goes sideways for quite a while. One super important guideline with triangles is that during this time, the volume decreases, and as a result, the volatility also decreases. Volume and volatility typically go hand in hand, and we almost always see both decrease when triangles are in play. Oh, and of course, don't forget that each of the waves in a triangle overlap the previous wave. This is very similar to diagonals from part 2 of this tutorial series. Once we have our 5 waves drawn out for a triangle, we then draw 2 lines to signify that we actually have a triangle in play. The first of those lines connects the AC, just like this, and the second connects the BD, just like this. So, say for a second we have the A, B, C, D drawn live in real time, and we're trying to figure out where the E will land. We can extend the AC line. However, more times than not, the E wave is going to undershoot or overshoot the AC line. This is another guideline of triangles. So sometimes it'll fall directly on it like this, but more times than not, it's going to fall short, like this, or above it, all the way up here. It is important to note though, that just like with all other corrective types, by the end of the E wave, we must have a net retracement. So the E wave cannot end above the start of our previous wave. Of course, by now, you know that waves are made up of other waves. Each of the waves of a triangle is typically made up of a 3-wave zigzag. However, sometimes one of the waves is more complex than just a single zigzag. And what I mean by that is it can be a multiple zigzag. So in part 4, you just finished learning about double and triple zigzags. Well, one of these waves in a triangle can actually be one of those. So instead of just being a simple ABC, you would have an ABC, an X wave, and another ABC, all making up just one leg of the triangle. When this does happen, it's usually the C wave of the triangle, but can also be the B or the D as well. And just to throw a bit more complexity into triangles, in a rare case, one of the subwaves of a triangle can actually be a triangle itself. This typically falls in the E wave. So you'll have your normal ABCDE structure, each made up of 3 waves, and wave E would come along and be made up of a 5-wave ABCDE triangle as well. So now the entire structure will be 9 waves instead of 5. Let's move into where you can actually find triangles. Triangles occur in a position prior to the final actionary wave in the pattern of 1 larger degree. I know that's a lot of words thrown at you, so let me give you a couple examples. In an impulse, we have a 5-wave move. The final actionary wave of an impulse is the 5th wave. So just prior to the 5th wave is our 4th wave, which means a triangle can make up the 4-wave of an impulse. On a similar note, in an ABC, the C wave is the final actionary wave. So if we go prior to the C wave, that means that a triangle can be the B wave in an ABC correction. Next up, if we have a WXY, where it's a double zigzag, or a triple zigzag as a WXYXZ, a triangle can be the final X wave in either of those patterns. We haven't dove into combinations just yet, but the X wave of combinations, which as I was hinting at earlier, are basically just double or triple flats, the final X wave in those combinations can also be a triangle. And okay, I swear this is the last one. In a corrective combination, again, more details on these coming soon, this is the one spot we can break that rule of being in a position prior to the final actionary wave. In a corrective combination, a triangle can be the final actionary pattern. I will show you this in a future video. The next super important guideline in a triangle will help you trade them once you're able to recognize and find them. So let's say we found a triangle in the 4th wave of an impulse and we're looking to enter, trying to get into the trade right near the bottom of the E wave, of course. We want to know where the market will take us next. How high is it going to go after leaving the triangle? Well, typically when a triangle is in the 4th wave position, wave 5 is usually very swift and travels the distance of the widest part of the triangle. So let me show you that in action. If we just draw the connecting lines of our triangle, this might be a little bit easier to see. So we're in this trade, and we believe we're in an E wave right now. Next up, we're looking for our profit target. The widest part of our triangle is our A wave here. From the top here, all the way down to where the triangle meets us down here. So we actually need to pull this line over just a little bit. And now we have our triangle drawn out fully. This right here is clearly the widest part. So let's take that distance and actually measure it. This is going to be the distance that, from wherever the bottom of the E lands, this is where we'll expect our 5th wave to finish. So if we take this and simply copy paste it to the end of the E wave, once the E wave is in and the market starts moving upwards, we would have this line drawn and expect to take profit right at the top of this blue line here. This 5th and final wave here is known as the thrust of the triangle and is almost always an impulse, but could be a diagonal as well. So now let's get into the 3 different variations of triangles. The one I've been showing you so far is known as a contracting triangle. We know this because if we draw those lines again, you can see that these lines are contracting towards each other. It's much wider up here than it is down here. And if we were to pull these out much further, you would see that these lines end up crossing each other at some point. Now, contracting triangles actually have one variation in themselves, and this variation is actually pretty common. The B wave can exceed the start of the A wave, so the B wave might fall all the way down here, whereas the start of the A wave is here. Just note that after that, the C has to fall within the range of the AB, the D within the range of the BC, and similarly, the E within the range of the CD. And drawing out our lines, we clearly still have a contracting triangle. This variation that I'm showing you is known as a running triangle. And one last guideline with contracting triangles, the price usually has a turning point right near the apex of the triangle. So in a real situation, we might have our lines drawn out all the way this far, where the E actually lands somewhere closer to the end of it, right near where these contracting lines would meet up. The next type of triangle is known as a barrier triangle. And what a barrier triangle signifies is that one of the lines is actually flat. So you can see this BD line is completely flat, and that the B and the D fall at the same price level. Barrier triangles are only valid with a BD as the flat line. It could not be the AC line that is flat, because the price always follows the flat line in these. So in this example, right after the E wave, we're going to go downwards past our BD flat line. Of course, this triangle could also be upside down as the 4 wave, where the BD would be on the top of the triangle, and the price would continue upwards after for a 5th wave. Our third and final type of triangle is known as an expanding triangle. Now, basically, if you followed the last two, this is the only possibility left. The line from the A to the C and the line from the B to the D are expanding away from each other. No matter how far we drew these lines, the width between them would forever increase. They would never cross each other. So there you have it, flats and their variations, and triangles and their variations, along with the rules and guidelines of each. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please consider clicking the like button and subscribing for future content. I hope you learned something, and I'll catch you all next episode.